I want to move over to the mixer panel and actually treat this like a mixer panel. What I love about Bitwig is how you can configure everything and it can make some big changes. So I don't want this to be a clip launcher. I'm going to go to the right side where my show hide buttons are, and I'm going to hide the clip launcher and replace this with full screen VU meters. Oh, it's so beautiful. All right. I don't need to see the send levels. I don't need to see the devices on each track. I don't really need to see the inputs and outputs either. So there we go. I do want to see the device panel down here though, because I might need to add some effects for EQing and device dynamic processing and stuff like that. Okay. But generally, when it comes to mixing, this is another reason I love Bitwig, because look at this. This is a proper mixing panel. And if I press D to hide the device panel and hit I to hide the inspector, isn't that gorgeous? If you're using a drum machine and you're on the mixer page, you'll notice there's two arrows here for the header of the drum machine track, and you can expand it. And I can see my peak levels down here, so that's good. I was operating with at least a little over 4 decibels of headroom, so it's not too bad, not too bad. So with all this said, the only things I really want to talk about are different things you might want to consider when it comes to trying to mix something before you get ready to export it. One big thing is just making sure that you're not clipping and going over 0 dB, and that you do have some headroom before you add some things to the master. This is EQ'd in a pretty decent way so far, just because I've chosen sounds that don't really fight with each other. But let's go in here and kind of tidy some things up a bit. This is my bass, right? Okay, so if I want to, a good EQ that I could use here, let me bring up my device panel. And in this case, I don't care about nesting this effect inside of the device, because what I really want to do is just clean up the output a little bit. We have a few different EQs here, and EQ Plus is the most robust because you have a lot of different filter curve types, and it just does everything you need. We also get a nice spectrum display inside here. All right, I'm pretty much thinking about like kind of cutting the lows above where the kick is, but giving it enough emphasis where it feels bassy still. Let me go to this polygrid sound, because one thing that's bugging me about this is that it just sounds a bit too dull. And it's primarily because I'm using this state variable filter as a bandpass filter. But I think I could also do some stuff to make this more interesting, maybe by trying to add some panning, some stereo movement. One effect that I like to use quite a bit for doing that is one called rotary, which I don't know if it's necessarily intended for that, but it works quite well. Here's rotary, and, stereo position and volume modulation, so I guess it is meant for that. Here's my polygrid sound. Let me go over here and let's just select this, and I just want to loop this part of the arrangement. Command L is the shortcut to loop your selection. That's nice. It puts it in a different space. I think that I might also want to EQ this as well, because it is a little bit kind of, I don't know. There's some lower stuff coming from it I probably don't need. Generally, good rule of thumb, if it doesn't require bass, if it's not a bass sound, you can probably cut everything below 100 hertz and not negatively impact the sound. Okay, not bad. That works. Little subtle changes and whatnot here. All right. My drums are all part of a drum machine, and I added a saturator to the drum machine, partly because I wanted the drums to have a bit more presence, a bit more character, but also because by using a saturator, it's controlling the dynamics in a way where nothing is too much louder or quieter than the other drum sounds. All right. This could be also useful, not the saturator, but some sort of dynamic processing device on the master, just because I'm not doing like a hardcore mix. And let's say I want to export this and listen to this later, and maybe I have this playing before and after a bunch of stuff that's been properly mixed and mastered. I just don't want this to sound super quiet, okay? So please don't take this as a, a substitute for a proper mixing class. But I just want to add a limiter to my master so I can get a little bit more volume out of this before I make myself a little rough mix to listen to. So let me listen to the loudest part of my arrangement, which I'm assuming is probably maybe here. No, maybe there? No. Let's do this. Okay, so you can already hear it sounds quite a bit louder, but it's not peaking and it doesn't sound super squashed and it doesn't sound like it's being negatively impacted by the peak limiter. What I did, since I had so much headroom on the master, I had room to turn things up. It gave me a chance to use the limiter, increase the input going into the limiter, and the limiter is going to make sure that nothing is going to come out louder than the ceiling I've set. All right. So I reduced this a little bit so that the ceiling, the loudest possible volume, is minus 0.5 dB. And it hits that a couple times, but rarely does it exceed it so much that it just sounds squashed. So far so good. I think we're in a good spot. Now I could export this and share it with the world.